Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. It's the Jade Gemini. Today I am super excited to go ahead and bring you a review of this guy right here. The one, the only G-Shock Square, or more important to the topic of today's video, the GW-M5610 G-Shock. Today, we're going to go ahead and go over some of its overall features and more so talk about this watch as it sort of stands out and as it is useful in today's age of, 2023. So, before we do that, let's make sure we go ahead and get this a little bit more in the right dress to talk about the whole. I'm going to borrow a trick from old Nick, so... Okay, so with that out of the way, as corny as it is, it works. And we are back on the stock strap, which I think is important to tell the sort of whole story about this watch. So with that going ahead and being done, let's get some size comparisons out of the way first. So if you are a little bit newer to watches, or maybe you have a little bit of a newer G-Shock and you haven't picked up one of these G-Squares yet, we're gonna go ahead and compare it to one of the more popular watches that G-Shock makes right now, the 2100 series. So this gives you an idea of size side by side, as well as overall tallness, thickness. So as you can see, they're practically identical in thickness, but there's definitely a little bit of a taller lug to lug with the 2100. We're also going to end up comparing it to a watch that is easy to pick up, and I think everybody should have one just for fun, the Casio F91W. Both in thinness as well as overall presentation. So, with all that out of the way, I'm going to go ahead and jump right in and kind of show how this watch that's 40 years old stacks up today in 2023. But before we do that, I think it's important to kind of tell you the overall story of how the G-Shock brand started. Probably all heard this, but I'm just going to give you the quick and dirty version. So, in the 1980s, Kikuo Ibe basically had a mechanical watch given to him by his grandfather, and he dropped it. And heartbroken, this was kind of a catalyst to create a watch that would survive those sort of things and just about survive anything. And he happened to be a Casio engineer. So he ended up going ahead and starting testing, and through tons and tons of different testing, trying to figure out exactly how to make things work, he ended up seeing something very simple, that inspired him just in the world. It was a child playing with a ball, a rubber ball. And the idea is that stagnant air in the middle of that was all but unsettled because the outside layer of that rubber was protecting that. And it sparked the idea of the G-Shock and the 1010, there's another Casio going off, a 1010 protection. So this would be a watch that would be 100 meters water resistant, could be dropped from 10 meters and survive, and I think also could survive 10 G's of force. That one is the one that's kind of the wild card that I'm not the most sure about, but basically it would be extremely strong and extremely durable. So with all those characteristics out of the way, he ended up going to work, and over a multi-year period, I think around 83, maybe 84, he made the first G-Shock ever, the DW or GW 56 or 5000, sorry. So it'd be the GW 5000. And it looked practically identical to this watch that you see right here. The G-Square, this design, is the first ever G-Shock design that was created. And then there's a lot of different DNA and generations and things that ended up going ahead and following suit throughout the years. And so the idea was to have a watch that would be durable, that would survive, but also, coming into the fact that this used an LCD display, this also ended up going ahead and giving some of the technological marvels of the 80s, kind of the ability to be added into this watch, which we'll kind of go ahead and talk about next. But before I get to that, this is the GW-M5610, which I feel like is the perfect sort of epitome of what a G-Shock should be. One idea that I think that is important, especially with Casio, is that they bring a lot of value with their watches. So where the GW-5000 was a steel milled case like this, surrounded by a rubber urethane sort of material, later on down the line with manufacturing methods and everything like that, they've made the watch lighter and also cheaper by having an impregnated polycarbonate or plastic material that essentially the watch then has the rubber and everything inside. So to me, this is definitely more the drill down, kind of like when, the Mercedes comes out with a nice thing, and then a couple years later, your Camry or your Corolla has it. This is the perfect blend of the high-end technology, which I'm about to get into next, as well as the sort of lower price point that more common folk can afford, because that original 5000 model, I think, would have been about $300 to $400, as today's money converts. So it was not a cheap watch back in the day, since it was cutting edge. And that gets me to that next thing, that this was cutting edge back in the day, in the 80s. You have to think, if you were in a certain profession, if you needed a chronograph, if you traveled the world and needed to keep track of multiple time zones, if you needed an accurate stopwatch for sport, I said chronograph, so that sort of ends up covering that. If you needed a watch that was tough for outdoors, all these different things, you would have to have certain complications. If you needed an alarm on your watch, you would have to have watchmakers that have hundreds of years of experience that have been drilled down into a company and make these really complicated, complications. And this would have cost, thousands of dollars. And now, like that, you have this LCD screen, which was everything in the 80s. I mean, you look at the, the cars and, the different things, the radios, everything. I mean, I had a 300ZX87 and it had a digital display like that, and that would have been, woof, you know what I mean? Blade Runner, crazy. So this was the highest tech. And just to kind of go overnight for somebody to buy a watch that would have the ability to, have precise timing through quartz, be able to have a world timer, that you would have multiple cities on your arm, be able to have 5 alarms that could wake you up in the morning, that could have a stopwatch to keep time of pasta, which I just did a couple hours ago, or how long you are in your breaks, everything matches, or a countdown alarm to remind you on something, a timer that counts down. It's just insane. This thing could even be considered rudimentary by today's standards, when you have these Apple smartwatches that have GPS and tell you the weather and can alert you, on the Twitter drama or whatever, or give you notifications when somebody likes something, or your Amazon order has shipped. This can seem like old tech, but back in the day, this is so far-fetched, or so forward-thinking, it would have been insane. There would have been nothing like this. And I think that this is sort of that antithesis of what Casio is sort of built on these days, with coming with special models that are built for different environments or different tasks, and having implementations built into different modules with these watches. The other thing that still feels like magic even as of today, this is almost the perfect predecessor of this watch as far as evolution, as far as the same sort of design philosophy is still keeping this a watch. I feel like this watch these days is kind of the perfect smartwatch for someone who doesn't want to be completely connected. You have your phone for that, right? But if you just want to live your life sort of distraction free, but still need the sort of connections, I feel like this watch still makes 100% sense these days, because you get so many useful things out of this watch, like timers, and if you do travel, world time and everything like that, but you're not being pulled away from life with all the notifications and the emails and the endorphin hit that somebody liked your photo of your EDC gear or of your selfie or whatever the case. It is this perfect blend of everything you need and nothing that you don't. But I think Casio knows that, especially with this newer generation coming in and the always connectedness that needs to go ahead and be, there needs to be some changes. And that is where Casio is moving forward. They just ended up going ahead and releasing about a month to 2 months ago the fact that they are going to be coming out with a G-Square model that has a much more information-based multi-pixel screen. So when a call is coming through or a text, it should be able to be read. You could possibly control music off of your watch that you're listening to and streaming, customized notifications, more in-depth reminders and calendar reminders and different things like that. And I think if there's one company that could do it, it would be the company that made the first smartwatch. This guy right here. And it still is just an amazing piece of engineering to that. I mean, like I said, it feels like magic with the solar panel that's in this one, which is what separates the M5610 from the just regular 5600 that you would buy for $40 off of a rotating shelf at Walmart. Also, this has the multi-band, which it was not able to pick up last night, but essentially it picks up a radio frequency and sets itself within the nth of a second to atomic time, so it is always dead accurate. This feels crazy now in 2023. Imagine in 1983 what this would have felt like on the 5000 model. And so that you can get that for right around $100, or in some places right around $90, this is still a phenomenal buy. Imagine if you live in a world where this was the only alarm. Maybe you're a college student, you're strapped for cash, or maybe you live in a third world country, and to get your kids to school or to get yourself to that job, this is the alarm that wakes you up. This would have been insane in the 80s when there was no cell phone. This could have been a real necessity, a money maker. Just your world would have been wrapped around this watch. And that's what I think is so special about watches in general, is it tells the most important thing that you have in life that you can't buy more of, and that is, again, the most essential, which is time itself. A constant reminder that your life is, moving forward, right? Not to get more grim than that, but, memento mori. Make sure that you're timely and that you respect what time that you have. And I feel like I look down at my wrist and I know what I was wearing on my wedding, or when I think about the other night, for my wife's 30th birthday, I'll think of this on my wrist, or on her party. So just little tiny things like that. These watches kind of keep you in that moment instead of taking away with the constant flow of notifications and rush of distractions and everything like that. You could still be zoned in, but you could still, count something again, if you're watching your kids but need to make sure that you're cooking something or have a reminder. This has all those really great implications. Now, this watch does have some things that have not aged the best. For me, I love quartz with the digital display. It makes the most sense. If it has a seconds hand like this that's ticking every second, at least for me, that is not something that I like. I like an automatic. But with something like this, for example, that ticks away and moves the hand every 20 seconds or something like this, it feels smart. It makes sense. It is precise, right? And to the whole entire point of the toughness of this watch. It's just perfect in every single way. And that perfection follows through 40 years later. Again, like I was going to say, the LCD display from certain angles kind of washes out the fact that you have to initiate a backlight in the middle of the night and it is bright. You might want something that you're able to see some lume and be a little bit more subtle. But again, I think these type of things you would well think out beforehand before going ahead and reading this. It's quick time acquisition. It's easy to go ahead and read. It gives you so much information at a glance, and I think there's a reason why that wrapped up in all that toughness. There's a reason why everybody from your dad that goes to Home Depot to operators that rescue and stop disasters in the military count on this and base their life around it. It's just amazing. And so the fact that you can still get this watch, to me, this is one of the top 4 cornerstone pillars of sort of watch history. If you would ask me what is the most important watches, I would probably say the Santos, because it was the first one that was, kind of purpose-built with a bracelet on it to be worn on your wrist. Before they were like wristlets, which were more man-used pocket watches. I would then also say the next thing would probably be the Speedmaster, right? I mean, it's just such a big time in history, the moon race and everything like that. Having that watch sort of donned in with the sort of chronograph, I mean, it is a cornerstone of the watch industry. Next, maybe I would say an AP Royal Oak, since it saved the automatic watch during the quartz crisis, or maybe even a little bit reluctantly, I would say it would be some sort of Rolex. To me, there's other brands that I like a little bit more than Rolex, just for the simple fact that there is that sort of elitism that comes around it, which I do not like, but that's what's so magical about this humble little Casio, is the fact that it would definitely be number 4 up there, something that is completely unique that those other watches cannot do to the fullest degree, that have all those competition, that broke the norm, that has technologies above and beyond, and is even evolving nowadays. And I think the specialness and that cherry on top is just the way that it's been abducted into culture, from that military culture on one side all the way to, hip hop and urban scenes, and then being woven into pop culture. I mean, this is the one that is the most customized, has the most models and special editions and variations. This is the original, the OG, for lack of a better term. And this watch will never get old. It will just continue to age perfectly and continue to be useful in any situation. So 2023 or 2300, this watch is going to be a magnificent tool to have on your wrist. And I think there's more to come. If you love this design but need something more elevated, this would look a little off in the boardroom. So now with the steel models and even the sort of models that you sort of want to sort of strive for, those grails, right? Like the MRG 5000. Hey, if I won the lottery or I had 40 grand and I could pick from 5 different watches, that would be one of them that I would get, because this is, like I said, one of those cornerstone watches, to be honest, of the watch industry. So, does this watch still make sense in 2023? Hell yes. I don't like to cuss on the channel. I like to be a little bit more family friendly, but there's no way around saying it more than that. So I hope you guys ended up kind of enjoying this thought, this sort of overview of the history, the design, and just some features of the amazing GW-M5610. If you did like this video, please go ahead and give it a like, as well as subscribe. as it does help the channel, and there's a lot more content coming, especially some on G-Shocks for sure. As well, go ahead and comment down below, as I love going ahead and fellowshipping with you guys and answering any type of questions. Most importantly, I appreciate you taking time and watching this video right here, as there's so many other great content creators you could be watching, and you've watched my little channel here. So I really appreciate that, and I hope everybody has an amazing rest of your week. You take care. Peace.